wedge play has got to be one of the most important, if not the most important part of anybody's game. That ability to get the ball up and down from any distance, from like 40 yards to 120 yards. I want to show you a couple of the, what I think, the key areas to this. Number one is the strike. How consistently can you strike the golf ball? Number two is the trajectory of the golf ball. And number three is the ability to control the distance so you can land the ball exactly on the number. And that is a real important part. So let's start first with the technique, because we've got to get the strike consistent. If we can get the strike consistent, then we have the ability to then make, different length swings to produce different length shots and different trajectories. So the biggest fault I see with the everyday golfer is that you take your normal stance from your irons or even your wood play, and everything gets totally disconnected. You've got no connection between your arms and your body, and these fellas can wander all over the place, and you've got no chance of ever finding the ground the same twice. So what I like to do, and I call it cheating impact, I would set myself up, almost, if this was my normal address position, there's an impact position. I make a little wedge version of it. So my feet are open, my knees are open, my hips are open, everything's slightly open. But the most important thing is the connection. I put my triceps right onto my chest, so wherever my chest goes, my arms are going to follow. So at least I've lost any of this losing where the club's going to go. So that is, for me, is so important. So from there, then it becomes totally, really a top half of the golf swing. Is where your chest turns and where your arm swings. Everything else just follows nicely around. Now we can make the body work really kind of harmoniously. You watch when I made that swing, how little, my knees are moving, but there's not much, is it? And look how much my hips are turning, but everything's kind of, I kind of like a visualizer, almost in a tube. So the last thing you want is the knees to be heading outside the tube or the hips to be moving like laterally. You want to just turn anything kind of gently inside a tube, back and through. Then if you can get the body working as simply as that, just turn back, turn through, turn back, turn through. Keep it as simple as that. But what I would then want you to understand, very important part now, is the plane of the swing, because we're trying to make this action really as consistently as possible. So if we start putting the club on, a too flat a plane or too steep a plane, it's got to find its way back to where it started. So for this part of the swing, I really want you to understand what a good plane is and how it just, if you can imagine there's an arc coming around from your address position, there's an arc around, and you just swing the club around on that arc, and it just drops back down and it continues back through. So that's really all we're looking for to start off with, a simple swing back, halfway back, swing it back down on the arc and halfway through. Let me now help you to have that ability to hit a wedge shot the exact distance you're looking for. And I call this my clock face, where basically I would take a club, a wedge, either a 60 or a 54 or a pitching wedge, and I would have a certain length backswing and a certain length follow through with that club, and that would give me a yardage. So if I took my 60 degree and I took the club back, so 8 o'clock was here, somewhere here, basically where your left hand goes, so 8 o'clock, 8 o'clock. If I played that shot with a 60 degree, it would fly 40 yards, okay? So obviously 9 o'clock, a little bit longer, 9 o'clock through, that would go 50 yards for me. Now, if you get into this, don't get your mates to tell you, well, that wasn't 9 o'clock, it was 8:45. It's what you feel. So work out your own little system. Obviously you can get every time you go longer. 10 o'clock, we used to go 60 for me. 11 went 70, and then I called it full or flat out. I could then get it to 80, 85 yards. So what I used to do was practice that. So I had that, and chart that in the back of my yardage book. And what you do is do that with your 60 degree, do it with your 54, whatever your gap wedge is, and do it with your wedge. And you'll get a wonderful kind of graph, and you'll get an overlap. For example, so if I then have an 85-yard shot, which normally would be a flat out 60 degree, but it's into the wind, I'm on a sandy lie, I'm slightly uphill, well, I now know, well, I can't really get that one there, I'm forcing it. So I could then go to my 54, and I could look in my little chart quite simply and go, a 10 o'clock swing with my 54 will go 90 yards. And obviously playing slightly into the breeze, that's how far I've calculated this shot to go. So that was a great way of dealing with different distances. Another really useful aspect for this part of the game is that when you're on the golf course and you have a certain shot, a 100-yard wedge shot, but it's 100 yards, But through depth perception, i.e. bunkers, lakes, mountains, whatever, it just doesn't look 100 yards, or you're under pressure and you think, wow, how hard do I hit a 100 yards wedge shot? Well, then at least you know, I go to my 54 degree and I know, well, if I make my 9 or my 10 o'clock swing with a 54 degree, it's going to fly at 100 yards. So it's a great way to relieve the pressure, to get you out of that and give you at least a chance to play the shot the best you can. One more very important part to this is grip pressure. You will find as you fine tune your wedge play that by varying the grip pressure, sometimes if you're just pulling a wedge right, consistently right, just a couple of paces, your grip pressure in your right hand just may be fractionally too tight. So experiment with that. It definitely will help you. This is a part of the game, is a must do. You could take 6, 10, a dozen shots off your game.